Mao Zedong came to power. He couldn't have come to power had it not been for very powerful forces inside the United States. At the end of World War II, the Japanese had been driven out, but there was a large division in China. The nationalist Chinese under Chiang Kai-shek held a large portion of the country, and another section was in the hands of the communist forces, Chinese forces, under the leadership of Mao Zedong. And the nationalist forces and the communist forces were bitter enemies, even though they had fought more or less together against the Japanese. They both knew that when the war was over, only one or the other would be able to survive. And so they were preparing to fight each other. That was not in the best interests of the people in Washington, D.C. They didn't want that to happen, and they put pressure on the nationalist Chinese, Chiang Kai-shek's government, to accept the communists into their own government in key positions, what they call a coalition government. And they wanted them to go into very key positions. In other words, in control of the military in particular. Well, that's the end of the game, you know. The nationalists didn't want any part of that. So General George Marshall, who was in charge of all of the military operations in the Asia theater at that time, simply cut off the flow of ammunition and arms to the nationalist Chinese and made sure that all of the military equipment that was left behind by the Japanese was delivered to the communist Chinese. And with those two acts, there was no question that Mao Zedong's forces, which was now by this time much better equipped than the nationalist forces, that they would be victorious, and that is how it came to be. And George Marshall even boasted afterwards. He said, "With the stroke of my pen, I now disarm 30 divisions of Chiang Kai-shek's army." So that all came out of the United States. That was the decision of the so-called capitalist forces in America that the Chinese communists would now take over China. So all of these things are contrary to the conventional knowledge of what happened in history, but as I said before, none of it is really difficult to find. It's a matter of recordable, it has been recorded history, and it's not even a question of opinion anymore.